And one of the things I want to say is that we have wonderful riders over in the arena. And there's Alice, and there's Steffen, and there's wonderful people over there. Anna riding great horses. But all of us ride horses too. So Dressage for All is really about all of us and them. They're working on their dressage and their piaffe, and we're working on our canter circles. Or we're at the beginning working on a leg yield, or we're trying to stay on, and it has been incredible to see people from Spain and people from Honduras and people from Louisiana and people from California trying to learn how to ride our horses just a little bit better. So we're thankful that we've been able to really help you and help horses. So let's hear it. I want to hear Dressage for All. Ready? Dressage for All! And with that, I want to welcome my daughter. As you probably know, she's loved horses for her entire life, and she started riding when she was about 10, and we gave her 6 riding lessons for her birthday. That was about 6,000 lessons ago. So, with no further ado, here's my daughter, Amelia Newcomb. Give her a clap.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys all for being here today. This is like so amazing to be doing this in person. I've done a ton of these on Zoom. Raise your hand if you've been to one of my lectures on Zoom. Yes, lots of you guys. And as much fun as that has been, doing it on Zoom, it's really cool to see your faces and to meet you guys. I honestly, yesterday and this morning as well, so many of you guys came up, and like it gives me chills and almost brings tears to my eyes to hear your stories and to hear that I have been able to help you with your horse in some way, with your riding, to be able to give you education or a second chance, you know, to not give up, to keep going, to believe in yourself and to believe in your horse. I started making YouTube videos in 2018, and at first it was like kind of discouraging. I'd like put all this effort into making a video and like maybe 50 people would watch it, and I thought, well, one thing I've learned from horses is you just have to stay consistent. And I'm just gonna make one YouTube video every week. And it's evolved into this incredible thing. And I really wanna thank all of you guys, because if it weren't for you guys, none of this would be possible. And I really mean that, because you watch the videos, you think about it, you learn, and then you go home and you do the work. And that's the hard part. And you guys are so responsible for your success and for your progress. Of course, I help with that, but it is so rewarding for me to be able to hear your stories and to be able to see your success and your progress. And one thing that's really special, which Joellen talked about, is that we all love horses. And we all love to ride, and we're all at very different stages along the journey. Some of us are just starting out at the beginning, learning how to get on, learning how to position our bodies. Others are, like we saw yesterday, the top riders in the world. But the thing that unites us is that we're all learning, and that's the beauty of dressage. You're never done learning. You're always trying to get better, trying to learn something new. And the community that we have is amazing. And a lot of that's online, but one thing that's really important to me and to all of us is that we support and encourage one another. None of us is better than anyone else, and we all struggle. You know, dressage is hard. And it's so important that we help one another and offer encouragement and education and support especially when we have those low days, because we all know with horses, like the highs are really high and the lows are really low. So thank you guys all for being here. As you know, today we are talking about rider position, which is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think rider position is one of the most important parts of riding for a lot of different reasons. I'm sure you noticed the riders yesterday and how lovely all of their positions were. Their harmony that they had with their horses. I always think of when I see those riders, they look like centaurs. Like from the waist down, they're just connected to their horses. There's no daylight between their bum and the saddle, and that's really cool to see. And what their position allows is that it allows them to communicate with their horse with invisible aids. And it allows them to really have harmony with their horse. Some of my favorite riders yesterday were Ingrid Klemke. She definitely, yes. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but her saddle didn't have any knee rolls on it. Her position did not change. I was watching her in the warm-up and I was like, man, her legs are so strong. I mean, you can see the definition of her leg muscles through her pants. And she, you know, the connection that she has with that horse, the harmony that she has with that horse. Also, in her tempi changes, her legs like barely move. And that is amazing to see because that is a difficult movement to do. And to ride with such subtle and invisible aids is incredible. Of course, Steffen, he's one of my all-time favorite riders, and he had a lovely ride yesterday. His horses are always so soft, and again, his aids are very subtle. One thing that I love about Steffen is his posture. He sits up so tall and so straight, and that transfers over into his horse. You know, when you have good posture and you carry yourself, your horse is going to have good posture. They're going to carry themselves as well. Anna Buffini, she's another American rider with her horse Diva. Yay for Anna. So, and I think hopefully we're gonna have some guests appear later on today. But again, Anna, you know, her seat is amazing. She's so connected to her horse. And one thing that I loved about watching Anna's ride with Diva is, again, the harmony. Like, they have such a connection, and their ride was, you know, mistake-free and just so beautiful to see the two of them compete. So one thing that I like to do, and that I hope you guys will all learn from, is when you're watching these riders, of course we're drawn to the horses and watching the horses, but it's really important to study the riders as well, to really focus on like their seat. What are their hips doing? What is their back doing? Look at their legs. What are the heels doing? How are their feet positioned in the stirrups? Really watch their hands and their elbows and really study that and think about it. In our brains, we have what we call mirror neurons. And so actually, if you're studying a rider, it's firing some of those same signals in your brain. And that's part of why the videos and the online stuff work, is because if you really study, you know, when you're watching my videos, if you study what my body's doing, it's firing some of those same neurons in your brain. And so for all of us where we have limited time in the saddle, you maybe only get to ride 3 or 4 days a week, watching videos, watching other riders can really help you to expedite your learning. And so that's one thing, like, I'm so excited to be here. Yesterday I spent a lot of time in the warm-up and I studied their position and everything about what they're doing with their bodies, so that then I can go home and hope that I'm riding at least somewhat as well as they are. So I hope you guys are all feeling inspired. Yes? Yes, inspired to go home and ride better. Okay, so next up, we're going to be talking about rider position. So as amazing as all of these riders are and the horses, I'm sure that there's, we're inspired, but you also feel like there's a gap, right? Like there's a gap between where you are and what you look like and what these riders look like. So it was really wonderful to hear how, Steffen at such a high level, he's dealing with a lot of the same stuff that we are all dealing with, right? Like getting your horse in front of the leg, making sure that your horse is reacting to the smallest aid possible, working on suppleness and relaxation and connection. And it's just really fun to hear that. It's like I said before, we're all at different stages on the journey, but I always say that it goes back to the basics, and it goes back to, your rider position is at the crux of a lot of this. So the bad news is that your rider position is probably holding you back from making progress. Our horses are our mirror. And so if you're leaning forward and hanging on the reins, your horse is going to be heavy and on the forehand. If you're crooked or stiff or not supple, that's going to have an impact on your horse as well. The good news is that your rider position is definitely something that you can fix. It's something that you can take responsibility for, that you can work on, and that you can change and you can improve. So I'm going to be doing, starting the next month, we're going to be doing a rider position challenge, which I think is going to be really fun and a great opportunity to really sit down and identify what are the issues that you have in your position, how is that impacting your horse and impacting your training, and then let's come up with a plan for how to fix that and have a deadline to work, really hard and get to that. I think, like Steffen said, he's got competitions that motivate him, and he does all the preparation leading up to that. And for those of us that don't compete, sometimes we need some other kind of a deadline for motivation. Okay, so next on my list, I was going to talk about why rider position. So why is your rider position so important? The first thing is for safety. None of us want to fall off. None of us want to get hurt. And so when we ride in the correct position, when we have the correct alignment, that is what really allows us to stay balanced on our horses when they do something unexpected. So like when they spin around or when they bolt or when they buck, that is when your rider position is very, very important. The second one is connection. So we all dream of feeling really connected to our horses. Those moments where it's like your body and your horse's body are moving as one. Those are really the special moments. It's not such a good feeling like when you're bouncing on your horse or when you're that jarring motion. It can be really painful for your back. And so rider position is what allows you to really absorb and follow the motion of your horse. And then once you have that and you're with your horse, then you can give your horse clear and effective aids. And we saw that with the riders yesterday. Their aids are so subtle and so small because of the effectiveness of their rider position. And then of course, the last reason is I think for all of us, we want to have fun. We love our horses and we want to enjoy riding. And the more that you focus on your position, the more that you're going to be able to enjoy riding your horse. So I'm going to give you guys a framework that I use to focus on my position. If you got one of these little stickers here on rider position, basically the framework is seat, legs, hands. And this is really, really important. So I want you guys to repeat after me. Seat, leg, hands. Seat, leg, Seat, leg, hand.
Seat, legs, hands.
Okay, good. I think you got it. So our brains are kind of wired wrong for riding. If you think about everything that you do in your life, we do it with our eyes and our hands, right? We're texting, we're driving, we're cooking dinner. A lot of what we do is with our hands. And so those neurons that go from your brain to your hand are very strong. When we ride, we need to focus on brain to butt, as my husband says. And so when you're riding, about 70% of your calories burned should really go to your seat. And the main function of your seat is to follow and absorb the motion of your horse. I'm sure we've all seen riders like trying to drive their horse forward from their seat, like trying to like shove their horse with their seat. That's really not a good look. So your seat should mainly be for following the motion of the horse. Your legs are the driving aid. So your legs are what get your horse going forward. And of course, like Steffen said, we want our horses responsive to our legs. We don't want to be kicking our horse every single stride. So we've got 70% seat, 20% go to your legs, and then only about 10% go to your hands. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that all of us, myself included, make, is that we ride too much with our hands. And we go to our hands first instead of thinking about our seat and our legs first. So that's one thing when you're riding around, is kind of repeat that in your head, like seat, leg, hand, seat, leg, hand. That always has to be the sequence of your aids. And it's something that you're consciously going to have to remind yourself of, because we all tend to want to go first to our hands. Another thing that's really important about your rider position is this idea of recalibrating your position. And so when you first get on and you sit in the saddle and you get yourself organized, your position is pretty good, right? But then you go to do something difficult, like you're trying to learn how to do a half pass or a leg yield, or your horse spooks and spins around, and you're gonna get out of position. That happens to all of us. And so in those moments, it's really important to take a moment and recalibrate your position, get yourself back in the correct position, and then continue on with your ride. Another important thing is that you have to check your position, and then check your horse, and then check your position. And that's the hard part, is that you can't forget that you're the leader of your horse, and you need to tell your horse what to do. So go back and forth where you kind of check in with your position, and then you direct your horse and tell your horse what to do, and then check with your position again. So we have a saddle somewhere, and we have a volunteer, right? Okay, so we're going to demonstrate. We're going to get Mark up here in the saddle and demonstrate some correct position, some incorrect position. He has kindly volunteered. Look at all the people. You're going to do great. We appreciate you. Okay, so this thing is mostly stable. Yay, everyone give Mark a round of applause. You mainly ride Western, right?
Yes, and in the words of Brett Kidding, look at all the people.
Okay. So don't ride in tennis shoes. Like, I do not endorse this. It's very important that you have good shoes on. Okay. So the first thing is, for your stirrup length, when you take your foot out of the stirrup should be even with your ankle bone. So we need to shorten these up a bit. Yeah. Okay, so you want to step off and let's shorten them a few holes. Yeah, I think maybe 3 or 4 holes. Oh, we might have to wrap these. Okay. Okay, let's see if this will work. Okay, that one might be okay.
The saddle better than the rag. I'm good like the saddle better.
That might not be a good thing.
No.
A couple of things that are important here is that you want to make sure that the stirrup is really perpendicular and then it goes right across the ball of your foot. So you don't want your stirrup to be twisted to one side or the other. Okay, good. And then you should feel even pressure across the ball of your foot from your big toe to your pinky toe. So that's something that's really good to check in with as you go through your ride, is to check in with that feeling across the ball of your foot. And again, if you do something difficult, like if your horse spins around or spooks, or sometimes if you're trying to kick and get your horse to go forward, you might lose your stirrup position. So you always want to go back to your stirrups and make sure that you're grounded. So how much weight should you have in your stirrups? I would say that the weight of your upper body should be in your seat bones, and the weight of your legs should be in the stirrups. If you have more weight in the stirrups, can you try and demonstrate putting more, like, press into your stirrups and lift your butt out of the saddle? There you go. Yeah, so you can see how that immediately destabilized him. So you don't want to jam your foot in the stirrup and have too much weight, nor do you want to have no weight in your stirrup. Okay, so the first thing, now we've got our stirrups, is that I want to see a nice straight line from his ear, shoulder, hip, heel. So yeah, there you go, there you go. So the reason that this line is really important, sit up a little taller. There you go, there you go. So this line is really important because it puts you in neutral spine. And neutral spine is what allows you to absorb the motion of your horse. Some of the most common mistakes that I see are leaning forward and lower leg going too far back. Can you demonstrate? Yeah, a little more forward. Yeah, okay, he says, oh my gosh. So again, that's going to put your horse on the forehand, and that's going to destabilize you, and you're no longer in neutral spine, so you're going to be bouncing in your horse. And a lot of people, especially at the canter, everyone likes to lean forward. It's also something that when you get nervous, our body innately, we want to curl up into fetal position. The other common mistake that I see with alignment is a chair seat. Do you know what a chair seat is? No. Okay, so a chair seat is like kind of what you're doing, where your lower legs go way up here and you're leaning way in the back, like you guys are sitting in the chair. So again, this is not a good position because when you're doing this, you're not going to be able to put your leg effectively on your horse, nor are you going to be able to correctly absorb the motion of your horse. So that's your alignment. Now the next thing is to find your seat bones. So your seat bones are, of course, a big part of your seat. Yeah, so all of you guys, go ahead and put your hands under your seat bones there. And you're going to start off with what you want to feel is you want to feel that your seat bones are kind of pointing down into your chair. Now the next thing, they're all doing it out there in the hall. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to overarch your back and kind of stick your butt out behind you. Can you demonstrate that for us? Overarch your back. Stay forward, stick your belly out, and make your, yeah, there you go. Okay, now, so that's what we call an anterior pelvic tilt. Now the other problem that sometimes we do is we do a posterior pelvic tilt, where you kind of round your shoulders and your back, and when you do that, you'll feel your seat bones kind of point forward and slide to the front. So you always want to think about having even weight on both your seat bones, and that your seat bones are pointing straight down into the saddle. So that's a really important part of your seat. Like when you're repeating, when you're going around and you're riding, you're thinking seat, leg, hand. You think about your alignment, and you think about both of those seat bones in the saddle.
What I've noticed is it feels really unnatural when it's not right.
Yes, it feels very unnatural when it's not right, absolutely. And that's really like form and function. That's why we want to ride with this alignment in neutral spine, is because it keeps you balanced in the saddle, right? If you're leaning forward and your horse spins around, you could fall off. We wouldn't want that. Okay, so the other concept with your seat, which I actually learned from Sally Swift in her book Centered Riding, which is a wonderful book. You guys should all read it. Yes, Sally Swift, is this idea of riding from your center. So if you put your hand kind of below your belly button, and then imagine a triangle that goes back to your spine. Right here in front of your spine, there's a lot of nerve endings that go there and control all the muscles in your body. So that point is your center. And whenever you're going to give an aid to your horse, whether you're going to ask for the canter or do a downward transition, you always want to think of this point down low in your abdomen. So every aid that you give comes from your center, and that's going to help remind you about your seat. Because, again, one of the biggest mistakes I see riders make is that they get top heavy and they do everything with their hands, as opposed to really thinking about their seat and making all the aids come from that area in your body. So, good. So now we've got your seat organized. You're going to ride from your seat, right? Okay. So then the next thing is your legs. And your leg position here actually looks quite good. You might, like, if anything, I see your lower leg wants to go a little bit more forward. So for those of you guys that have thigh blocks on your saddle, they're there to support your leg. Your knee should be behind the thigh block, like Mark is doing very nicely. If your leg is coming over the top of the thigh block, that's not a good thing. That means that either your stirrups are too short or you're kind of like drawing your leg up to try to get your horse going forward. The other thing that's important is your knees. So your knees should have contact with your saddle. When I first started riding, my knees would always like flop out of the saddle. I did a lot of Western riding, and that's a bad thing because it destabilizes your seat. So your upper leg should really help to stabilize your seat. Now, one of the most important muscles for your riding is your glute med muscle. So I'm going to have all of you guys stand up now. Okay. So the way that you can activate your glute med muscle is, and you can do this actually in the saddle. You're going to take one foot out of the stirrup. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to balance on one leg. You're going to turn your opposite toe just slightly out, and then you're going to pull your leg back at like a 45-degree angle. So you're like this. And what you'll feel is you'll feel kind of your butt right here. You'll feel that muscle start to engage and maybe start burning a little. That's hard to do in the saddle, isn't it? You'll take my word for it. So this glute med muscle here, this is what allows you to put your leg on your horse. So when you go to apply a leg aid, it really should be coming from up here in your hip. And the glute med muscle also is what helps to keep you stable in the saddle so that you're not like collapsing to one side or the other or leaning in one direction or the other. So you might notice a difference from one leg to the other. Like you might feel really good doing it on one leg, not so good doing it on the other leg. But this is an exercise that I learned from a physical therapist, which is a really good exercise to do before you get on your horse, so that you're kind of activating this muscle, and that way when you're riding and you need to apply a leg aid or you feel that you're getting a little unstable in the saddle, you can think about your glute med muscle. For those of you guys that grip with your legs, grip with your knees, that's because you're not using this glute med. So the way that you want to put your legs on the horse is actually by thinking about using this glute med and kind of wrapping your legs around the horse as opposed to gripping with your inner thighs. So, awesome. I think That we're done with you, Mark. Thank you. Question. Yeah.
When I ride, I tend to ride a little bit farther out on my feet. Is this where the stirrup should be sitting on my foot? Because I feel like I'm a little too far in the stirrup.
The stirrup should be right on the ball of your foot. So I can't exactly tell because of your tennis shoe, but is it on the ball of your foot?
I usually ride a little bit more towards maybe where the curve begins.
Okay. Yeah. You just want to make, you shouldn't feel the pressure on your toes. You want it to be on the ball of your foot. Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's too far forward.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to have the pressure really on the ball of your foot, because if it's on your toes, that's not really stable enough.
Okay.
And your foot might slip out of the stirrup more easily. You're welcome. Thank you, Mark. Good horse. Good horse. Good horse. Good spot you are.
Hello. And a special shout out to the 5 other men that are here. So yeah, the scrambled eggs thing, which some of you are going to do right now. See them getting ready over there. So, as instructors, right, we're always looking for ways to get people to understand the words and make a picture with those words. Okay? Is that true? All right. So, who is? Nicole. Oh, thank you. How do you get people to understand what you're trying to say? But you got to think of different ways to say it. And when I took a lesson once, I've been riding about 12 years, and I've ridden with some real famous people. And 12 years into it, Albert Heidemann comes to me and he puts his hand on my forearm and he goes, "Oh my God, why are you so strong?" And I was like, "What?" Turns out, being real strong doesn't help. All right, there's a video, you YouTube it, horse versus, tug of war, horse and human, right? And there's a horse, and it is dragging 20 men through the mud. Because it is not about strength, right? There's a reason that men and women compete equally. The only sport is in dressage. And men and women compete equally. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Because it's not about the strength, it's about the timing and the effectiveness of your aid. And so how do you teach that to people, especially when you're my size, and people go, "Oh, but you're so strong." Yeah, and that doesn't help. Right? I could, and then I could be the antithesis of what Steffen was talking about, which is that softness and that fluidity and that harmony. If you ride like a brute, it will look brutal. Not what we're after. So the scrambled egg, so Albert tells me about my forearm, right? And that was just so key, that my forearm got soft. And when my forearm got soft, I quit riding from my hands, I could ride from my elbow, I could ride from my shoulder. One day I'm making eggs. Normally we go diving on Saturdays. We couldn't go dive, the weather's bad, I'm making breakfast for 6 of my friends, and I'm scrambling eggs. And I went, "Oh my God, that's just like," it's not exactly like, and then I'll explain the difference in a minute. But anyway, I felt my forearm be soft so that I could spin those eggs. Go back to the barn, and I tried that with 2 students. I said, "Hey, think about scrambling eggs, and you know when you hold that fork and you go," and Carolyn says, "I use a whisk." So, we brought whisks today. But that feeling of being able to go fast with your wrist is because your forearm muscle is soft. So I tried it with those 2 people, they got the picture, and then we did the thing on the YouTube, and just like everybody else here, my life is so much better because Amelia's in it. So we tried that, people understood it, we did the YouTube thing, people wrote back and said, "Oh my God, it's changed my horse." And I can't tell you how humbling that is, that I helped so many horses. So thank you, you know. And you know, when she says that about dressage for everyone, right? It's every man can ride, you know, well, in this case, every woman, but, you know, we can all be good to our horses. Everybody can. You don't have to buy a $500,000 horse and go down and do piaffe and dressage. You can be good to your horse, and your horse will like you. And it is just, it's been just fabulous, all the responses we've had for that. So anyway, the scrambled egg thing. Who's up?
We need 3.
Right here, right there. No, the shy people in the back. Yes. Somebody, there we go. All right, we'll do the simplified version without. So,
Everyone can stand up.
everybody can stand up. So what it is, all right, so, up and down. And we do have towels, so don't worry. You use a fork, I use a fork, I know. I'm not going to spend money on a whisk. The fork works fine. All right, so the bowl hand is your outside rein, right? So you're holding that outside rein. Then your inside rein is the one that's got the whisk. So you're holding the bowl and scrambling the egg. Oh, ew. Now Amelia likes to make it harder. And you have to stand on your inside leg. So you guys are all going that way. So you stand on your right leg, you hold the bowl, now I'm falling off, and then you scramble. There you go. You feel how your forearm is soft when you do that. Yeah.
Soft forearm.
Soft forearm? All right. And that's, now, so here's where it's a little bit different. So we're all doing that with our thumb and our forefinger, okay? With the rein, it's your ring finger. All right, so how I describe this, now I'm going to move on over here. You can do this on a table at home. You put your arm down, okay? You bend your wrist in so that you can see the fingernail on your pinky. You lift that up and it goes forward. So your ring finger, your pinky's making that little circle instead of your thumb and your forefinger. But it's still, your forearm is soft, you have the flexibility in your wrist, and you're not locked on and holding that rein, right? So we all make little circles. So if you can see your pinky, then your knuckles face forward. You come in, you see your pinky, it comes up, and then your knuckles face forward. So your pinky finger's making that little circle. And everybody's feeling the forearm getting softer? Then you're soft in the horse's mouth. Yay! That's the scrambled eggs exercise.
Wait, you guys aren't done yet. You're not done yet. Now you guys have to switch hands and switch legs. Because
she makes it harder.
yes, because this is the thing. Most you guys were all doing it with your right hand. So now you've got to be able to scramble the eggs with your left hand and balance on the opposite leg.
Stand on our left leg, hold the bowl with your right hand, and scramble away with your left hand. Is it as easy? And that you need to work on because your horse knows it's not as easy for you on the other side as well. Right? So if you want your horse, because ultimately the goal is that the horse is even in both reins. Right? But for the horse to be even in both reins, guess what? So are you. Right? And these are all exercises you can work on, not in the saddle. You can improve all of these skills while you're not on your horse. And so when you get on your horse goes, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Oh yeah, we need to do your answer. Okay, so now we've done the scrambled egg challenge. We need one volunteer to come up here, sit in the saddle, and we're going to learn about the contact. Allison. So I don't know about you guys, but I definitely feel, you know, like I've talked to you guys, okay, seat, leg, hand. To be honest, that's gonna help you a lot with your contact. If you struggle with like unsteady contact or your horse being uneven, focusing on your seat and your legs is gonna go a long way to helping you establish a steady contact. But that said, we're going to demonstrate here a little bit more about what you should be doing with your arms and with your elbows when you're in the saddle. So go ahead, get up there. I think we'll just leave, you'll be riding without stirrups, which is of course a really good test of your position. And always so when you take the reins and when you think about giving a rein lead, you're going to think seat, leg, hand. So make sure your shoulders are back, make sure you've got your center engaged, and then you think about the rein contact. And that's really important, so when you use the reins, you're not just pulling with your biceps. Like you should not pull yourself out of the saddle. When you use your reins, it's got to come through your whole seat. So maybe we should demonstrate that. So sit, have your upper body a little back, think about tightening your core, and then Herman, take a little contact.
It's like, I don't know how many of you pray, but like if you roll into your knees so you can sit deeper, and stick your belly up, open up your chest, and sit deep. And you see how much strength you can take from me? You're actually holding me up right now. Okay.
Okay, now sit forward.
Tip a little bit forward.
But seriously, so many of us do that in the saddle. I mean, we do. We lean forward and pull thinking that that's gonna work, and it doesn't. Anytime you use your reins, you have to feel it through your whole body.
Okay, so the supply wrist, that's the part that supples your horse and says, come here. But what allows your horse to go forward is that your elbows are following, right? So now I want you to follow my hands. You're going to keep the weight the same all the time. You ready? There we go. And now supple with one hand. Yeah. And that's how that's done. You see how there's not any weight, right? Because now I'm going to sit against you. See how that's a lot more tense? Now, if it was a horse that's too long, right? There's a half halt and we're soft. Or a half halt and we're soft. There we go. That's the key. Is that tension stays the same in the horse's mouth. And you have to, it's not as obvious in the trot, but in the walk and the canter, there's not oscillation of the horse's neck. If you hit that so that it's, right, there's that slack and that shock load, how long does that go on before the horse goes, wow, you suck? Right? It's this. It's this. That the weight in your hand stays the same. When you follow, that's what that means, about following that nod of the horse's neck so that the contact stays the same. All right, I think we're done there.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think that's definitely, so her question for those of you guys that couldn't hear is, you know, you're going along at the walk and the contact feels good and your horse is round and you've got that steady contact. You go up to the trot and it all kind of falls apart. Your horse puts their head up and you just can't get them round, and how do you deal with that? So a couple of things. One is that anytime, so we were demonstrating like contact. Contact is basically from your elbow to the horse's mouth. And like Herman was demonstrating, first you have to establish a steady contact and teach your horse to accept the bit. Now connection involves the whole horse's body. So connection is the relationship of the hind leg through the back and to the mouth. So if you're going along and everything's great in the walk, you go to ask for the trot, your horse puts their head up, That's because you don't have connection. That's because you don't have the hind legs under, the back lifted. And so that's where it does get a little bit more complicated, and you have to really get the horse using their whole body. Some of the best ways to work on that are to do, like, first of all, for your transition, for focusing on your transition, think about doing like a little bit of shoulder fore or a little bit of a leg yield so that you get the inside hind leg stepping under into the transition. Then the second thing I would say is to check in with your position, because the walk is the easiest gait to maintain that correct position. Now you go up to the trot and you have momentum and you have suspension and your horse is bouncy. So more than likely, you're probably not as connected in your seat to your horse in the trot or in the canter as you are in the walk. And that's going to affect your ability to maintain a steady contact. So if you think about your position, your seat follows the motion of your horse's back. Your hands have to follow the motion of your horse's head, and that's where that following elbow comes in. So again, like Steffen said, right, go back to the basics. So you've got a good feeling in the walk, you try to carry it up to the trot, you lose it a little bit, see if you can get it back. If not, go back to the walk, get that steady contact, and then try to go back up to the trot and just, go back to the basics, make it simple, and then build up from there. But it definitely, contact and connection is for sure one of the hardest parts of riding. And like I said, seat, leg, hand, it's very, very much related to your seat, to your ability to stay really connected to your horse's back. And that's something that we saw with the riders yesterday, is their seat is so amazing and connected to their horse. And that really is what allows them to have such a nice, soft, and steady contact with their horse's mouth. So I hope you guys are inspired to work on your position. Like I said at the beginning, it's something that you can improve on. It's something that you can change. And I'm really looking forward to the Rider Position Challenge that we have coming up next month. I'm just so excited to see so many of you guys here today. It makes me so happy. And education and community really are two things that I'm really passionate about. So giving you guys as much knowledge and information that I possibly can to help you with your riding. And then your guys' job is the community part of that. And I am so grateful to each and every one of you for all the comments that you give one another on the Facebook Club, for helping one another. And the beauty of a community is that we're stronger together. That the more we help one another and lift each other up, that helps us. When you help another rider, when you offer a suggestion or support, that also helps you. And that's really what's beautiful about this. So I think we have some time for questions. Maybe Joelle knows what to say. Okay. So we're going to do some questions, and then Anna may or may not be coming.
She's got a kind of a busy week.
Okay, yes, tell me your question for either Amelia or Herman or Nicole. Nicole, as you know, is our resident judge. We're going to take a couple questions and we're going to introduce Nicole.
I have a question for whomever wants to answer. I'm sure I'm the only person in the audience that has stubby little legs and is working really hard to stretch from my hip and get a longer leg. And I've really been thinking, I don't ride with a side block on my saddle. Do you have, and I notice a lot of riders do, and I'm thinking about whether you think riding in a saddle with a side block is helpful for those of us who have difficulty lengthening our thighs down, if that would be a good tool.
So the question, so everyone can hear, is if you have shorter legs, how can you help lengthen your legs and get your heels down, and is the thigh block helpful or not?
So that's a good question, and it depends. The thigh blocks, they do, so first of all, I should say thank you to Custom Saddlery. They sent this out to us, so we need to thank them for sending this out to us. The thigh blocks, what I would recommend doing is sitting in a bunch of different saddles. So they make these thigh blocks with different angles and different lengths. So some of them are shorter and angled like more forward. Some of them are longer and kind of more down. In general, I feel like people with shorter legs do a little better with like a shorter thigh block, because you don't want the thigh block to go past your knee. So you definitely, the saddles will be designed differently based on your leg length. And they can be helpful for sure, but again, you don't want to rely on them. So that's kind of the key. Like if we think of Ingrid, like she doesn't have thigh blocks. The other thing that I would recommend doing is like a lot of stretching. So like stretching your quads, opening up your hip angle when you're not in the saddle. And that's one thing that we haven't talked a lot about today, but rider fitness and what you do out of the saddle has a huge impact on your riding. And I'm a big believer in exercising, working out, and doing exercises that really focus on your symmetry as well as your balance and coordination. So you really want to tailor your fitness program to your specific riding issues and your specific riding muscles.
Yes, and I just want to emphasize what Herman said. This isn't about strength per se. It's really about using your body well, being symmetrical, being able to give an aid and release it. So we can all do this. We can all ride a little better. Now, another question? Yes?
I have a question about the rain links. I have a problem with the rain.
That's Terry. Thank you, Terry. Terry's question about rein length and how do you keep your rein the appropriate length?
Okay, so that's a good question. I'm glad she asked. I like riding with thick rubber reins or reins with stoppers. Those are really going to help you so that you're aware of when the reins are getting longer. And then the main way that you keep your reins from sliding out of your hands is that you have to put pressure with your thumb onto your pointer finger. So you can see here how I'm like pushing down with my thumb onto the reins. And you want to make a little rooftop shape with your thumb. What this position allows is it allows you to still do the suppling motion with your wrist. So if you try to grip onto your reins like this and you have like hitchhiker thumbs, that makes your whole forearm really stiff, like Herman was talking about. So the way you maintain your rein length really is this pressure between your thumb and your pointer finger, which then allows the rest of your hand to move independently. And horses are clever about getting the reins out of your hands. And so I always say they're your reins. You don't want to let your horse get away with like ripping the reins out of your hands, because then they're always going to be feeling for that. And they're smart. They feel like when you tip a little forward or when you open your hands a little, and they go to pull the reins out of your hands. So you don't want to let your horse get away with like letting the reins long. And it's also confusing for your horse that the reins are constantly getting long and then you're shortening them and then you're long and you're shortening them. Your horse is like, make up your mind, like what frame do you want me to be in? So it's definitely something that you want to pay attention to. I've even had riders where I put a little piece of electrical tape, like colored electrical tape, just so, I mean, you do need to adjust your rein length when you're riding. You're not going to just like hold it at stopper 3 and never let go. But you want to be aware of that and really conscious of that. So I'm going to have Nicole come up here. Come on, Nicole. So Nicole is a licensed judge. Nicole works for me also. So she is the one that's responsible for... So Nicole does a lot of the behind the scenes. She's the one responsible for getting those emails into your inbox every Wednesday.
Sorry, there's so many.
Yes, we like to keep you guys entertained, make sure you're doing your homework. But I wanted Nicole to talk a little bit about the judge's perspective and how your rider position affects your score.
Thanks, Amelia. Hi everyone, so as Amelia mentioned, I'm a licensed dressage judge and I'm a rider just like you guys. I see a lot of riders coming to the arena. I see a lot of intro training and first level riders. And I see a range of different problems. I see people crooked, I see people tip forward. And it's interesting because when the rider's going around the outside, I can pretty much have a good education of where they're going to have difficulties in their test because of the frame that the horse is going and how they're sitting on their horse. If they're sitting up, engaged in their core and riding off of their seat, I know that they're not going to have any problems with their corners or their lengthens. If they're a little bit tipped forward, maybe having their wide hands, I can say, okay, well, I think the horse might get a little heavy on the forehand. Maybe he's going to get away from them in that extension in first level. So you can really start to learn and train your eye to see how rider position affects the horse and the way of going. And I think it's important to remember that as we're moving up the levels, we have the purpose at the top of our tests that talk about what the horse is doing, how the horse is framed and built. And as we move up the levels, the degree of difficulty in that purpose changes because the movements that we're asking for the horse get harder and harder and harder. If you've been in Amelia's courses, I always say, you're riding in the correct frame because the movements that you're doing at that level are easy. But what people forget is that as you're moving up the levels, it's not just the horse improving and getting better carriage, it's you as a rider as well. So when you're starting out and you're just doing intro level, it's really important that you're sitting symmetrical in the saddle, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be perfect. You can, if you make those mistakes, you lose it in the transitions, it's not the end of the world because the purpose of intro is rhythm and suppleness, right? And then as we move up and you start to get into your extension work and your lateral work, you have to be more balanced, just like your horse has to be more balanced. And I think that's the thing that people have to remember, and it's also why we see professionals come in and they take their young horses in the training level class and they get 80% because they're sitting like a Grand Prix rider in first level, and then their horse performs better. So I think it's important to remember that, to give ourselves a little bit of a break and a breather and understand that as we're moving up the levels, we can get better and better and better. We don't have to be the Grand Prix rider right away. And enjoy the ride and enjoy your tests because that's really what it's all about.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Can I leave now? Okay, question.
Okay, so I need some help on being able to keep connection and fluidity in the launches and half pass. Shoulder in, I'm able to keep a good connection and then steady and and it has been. As soon as I go into half pass, I lose the supplements, I lose the fluidness. The first one was late a little bit. So what do you recommend?
Okay, so she's struggling a little bit with her half pass. She said with the shoulder in, she's got it pretty good. The horse is through and supple. She goes into her half pass and she loses a little bit the connection. So I think that it's always important to think about the training scale and to kind of assess, like whenever you're doing a more difficult movement and you lose, especially if you lose rhythm, that's the base of the training scale. Like you said, that's a pretty clear sign that you are lacking a little bit in the suppleness or the throughness somewhere. So what I always recommend is making it a little bit easier, so taking it back, like probably going back and really working on your leg yields and making sure that your horse is really reactive to your leg, really through to both reins, really reacting to as small and as subtle of an aid as possible. That's one idea. And then the other idea is, so since like your shoulder in is pretty good, and the shoulder in is a prerequisite for the half pass, do your shoulder in, then do a few steps of half pass, and when you lose the rhythm or the suppleness or the throughness, go back to your shoulder in, get that back again, then go into your half pass again, and just repeat at that.
And then also too, with sitting in that half pass, is it, personally, I find it a bit easier to sit on the outside seat bone and then try and push up the inside one, because sometimes when I sit on the inside, is that correct or is that ignorant?
Okay, so her question is about her weight position in the half pass, and she said she finds it easier sometimes to sit on the outside seat bone to push your horse over, which is not correct, but you're right that it is easier. So the reason, like in the half pass, when you're pushing with your outside leg, that makes your body want to go to the outside. Like to apply your outside leg, it's easier if you kind of lean over to the outside so that you can put that leg more on your horse. But it actually makes it, you need to be sitting on your inside seat bone to make it easier for your horse to move over in the half pass. Because if you're leaning out here to the right and you're pushing your horse over there, now they have to pick up your weight and then move over. So you do really need to stay weighted on the inside seat bone, even though you're using your outside leg to push the horse over. Yeah, half pass is a hard movement. It's like one of the, when you're learning it, you feel just like a pretzel. Like, what are you supposed to do with your body? How do you get your horse to bend and move over? And another thing is go back to the walk and really do it at the walk a lot until you have that muscle memory there, and then focus on the trot and the canter. I think we have time for a few more questions.
Can you discuss the half halt as it relates to our seat leg and
The half halt, the golden question of the half halt. Okay, so the half halt is definitely, I think, one of the most like mysterious topics and things that we hear, like our trainers saying half halt, and you're thinking, okay, what does that even mean? So by definition, a half halt is to rebalance your horse and to get the attention of your horse. A half halt is also something that evolves over the years with your horse. So with a younger green horse, a half halt is very different than it is for an FEI horse, like an upper level horse. That said, a half halt is kind of the combination of your seat, your leg, and your hand. So if I'm thinking of half halt, I think seat, leg, hand. Now, how much of all those three elements depends on the horse. And that's where it gets tricky. That's where you have to sense, like, if your horse is really hot and running off, you're gonna need more seat and a little bit more hand. If you have a lazy horse, and your horse is kind of behind the leg, a half halt is really gonna be more about energizing your horse. So you're gonna need a little bit more leg than you do hand. A couple of things that are important about half halts is that they are in rhythm and that they're intermittent. So if you half halt, it's not just like, you're not gonna hold a half halt for like 5 steps. It's more effective if you go like half halt, release, half halt, release, half halt, release. Especially in the canter, you always need a half halt on the upbeat. So the upbeat is when the mane is flying up, because that's gonna help to get your horse more uphill and more engaged. If you half halt at the wrong time, when the front legs are on the ground, it's gonna put your horse more on the forehand.
What's your trick to half halt when the mane is up? Because as an amateur, I can't like get the rhythm right. So tell me more than just the mane's up.
So I think, honestly, one thing is in the canter is counting the rhythm. So like counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's a good thing to do in all the gaits, is to just count the rhythm. Sometimes you can count it out loud, you can count it in your head, but especially thinking about the training scale, knowing that rhythm is down there at the base of the training scale, you always have to have in mind that feeling of the footfalls. And you should be able to feel the footfalls in your seat. And like Anna said, you know, she was talking about, okay, I need to bend my horse more to the right. You need to do all of your aids and all of your half halts within that rhythm. So when you're in the canter, you always have to have this vision and this feeling of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, when you half halt, your horse is probably just going to break to the trot because it's not going to be in the correct rhythm.
Is the upbeat the 3 or the 1?
That's a good question. The upbeat is the 1. So the beat 1 is when the outside hind leg is on the ground, and the other 3 feet are off of the ground. So that's when your horse's back is going up. If you think about the canter, it's kind of like a wave. your horse's back goes up. That's beat 1. When the outside hind leg is on the ground, that's when you want a half halt. Beat 2 is the diagonal pair, so the inside hind leg and the outside front leg. That's when your horse's back is level. And then beat 3 is the down beat. So you don't want to half halt on the down beat. That's when your horse's inside front leg is on the ground.
So I just want to say a tiny bit about a half halt. Because we're on the West Coast, we get to see Steffen a lot, and Steffen warm up. And I was watching him with a young horse last year, and it was interesting to me because you could see the horse was extremely hot, and he'd go half halt, and then he would just like rest, half halt. So like he went around the entire outside of the arena before he entered, half halting every 3 strides. And you can see it, and it's very uphill, and it's very rhythmic, and it has a release. So that's good. Other questions? Yes?
Kind of asking for probably the majority of us that are on the older side, so this is not for Amelia. So, you know, I have lots of clients, and I know people, myself included, who had accidents. I've had no PT, so I can keep exercising. But we know exercising is important. But what about people with the hips that are false hips, the false knees, arthritis? I have severe arthritis in my hands. So of course I've invested in probably millions of dollars in rings. What would you, I mean, you can't just all go out to a gym and work out like 5 hours a day.
Right.
What is the happy medium?
I think that's a really good question, and one of the things that I think about is these are your horses. You love your horses. So you're going to do the very best you can for your horse. With Amelia and I have matching broken collarbones. So we have injuries too. And I just do the very best I can. Get the reins that are thicker that you can hold. Get stirrup leathers and the stirrups that help you position your leg. Do the things you can, and then just know it's your horse. They're amazing creatures. They will adjust to you. And one thing, we did a talk on the Century Ride. I want all of us to have a goal of doing the Century Ride. Figure out what your horse is and when you're going to get there, whether it's 7 years from now or 12 years from now. The Dressage Foundation, we're going to try and figure out a program. But it's really important that we love our horses, and it makes us healthier people and our horses healthier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that like Joellen said, horses are what keep us going. They're what get us up every day. They're what motivate us to be better people and also to take care of ourselves, to take care of our health and of our fitness. And yeah, certainly we're not all Anna Buffini that can do backflips, but you know, get out and take your horse for a hand walk and stretch and do what you can, because really something is better than nothing. That's kind of my motto. And consistency is key. Just do a little bit every day. Like in our strides group, we did 20 minutes every day of something, which is better than nothing. And then try to think about, like what I do for my fitness is that you want your fitness routine to help you to ride better. So you don't need to go to the gym and like lift a ton of weight and get huge muscles. That's not going to help you ride better. You need to be supple. You need to be symmetrical, and you need to have some level of cardiovascular fitness. So like we do in our strides group, we do Pilates, yoga, stretching, all of that kind of stuff. Or like Steffen said, do what you enjoy. Steffen said he enjoys swimming. So if you enjoy taking your horse for a walk, if you enjoy yoga, if you enjoy doing the elliptical, just do something that you can do, and that's going to help your riding a lot.
Thank you all for coming. I really want to say, as Amelia's mom, she wants to be on the team sometimes. And she's got 3 beautiful horses. So thank you for supporting her. There's a donation jar out back or on the table. But the courses, I came to horses because of Amelia. The master classes are incredible. They're really well organized. They're really a great pair of words and chapters connected to videos to help you. So join a class, join the Rider Position Challenge, which is in May, and join the community. I think all of us ride alone, and we're there with our horse, often by ourselves, and yet we're all struggling with similar issues. So it's been really interesting helping Amelia with strides and on the Facebook groups that we are not alone and we can help you. So dressage for all.
Yes, thank you guys. This has been so fun. I'm feeling inspired. I hope you guys are all inspired to go home and ride your horses. And thank you, Joellen and Javon and Nicole and Sylvia for videoing. Thank you, Sylvia.